Yo, what's good? Big Z here, and today I'm going to be talking about reverb and how to use it in your mix. If you don't control the reverb the right way in your mix, or you have too much of it, it'll just kill the whole mix, especially when you're trying to master and make your track loud. Having too much reverb will really hurt you while you're trying to do that. Listen to someone like Gray's mixes. They have some of the best mixes in the game, and if you can tell, they have barely any reverb on their leads and on their synths and on their drums and stuff. They just use it when it's absolutely necessary. So they use short reverbs or they use long reverbs and control them sometimes. But they're a great reference artist to use when you're trying to decide how much reverb to put on something, because they make their mixes sound so clean. So I'm going to be using this track as an example. I took all the reverb I had on the leads and just took it off for now. So I'm going to put it back on and show you guys what I do to kind of control the reverb in the mix and make sure it's not kind of ruining the mix. So I'm just going to go ahead and solo all the leads right now. So here are all the leads. Here's what they sound like with no reverb by themselves. So we definitely want some reverb on there to give it some space in the mix so they're not so up front. So what I'm going to do is send all these leads to the same reverb bus. And it helps a lot to use reverb buses instead of just putting the reverb right on the instrument track, because you can control it way better, and I'll show you what I mean in a second. So I'm just going to go ahead and send all these leads right here to a reverb bus. So I'm just going to use an empty bus here. I'm going to use bus 1. And right now I'm just going to put a random value on there so I'll be able to hear it. So now that I have my bus created, I'm going to open up some of the holo-room reverb on the bus. First I'm going to name it lead verb, just so we know, and then I'm going to open up some reverb on there. So at first I'm just going to mess around within the reverb plugin and get it sounding kind of how I want it, and then afterwards we'll do some other processing to make it sit in the mix better. So I'll just keep it like that for now. One of the first things you should always do is put an EQ right after the reverb so you can shape it a little bit and not have any really low or really high frequencies coming through. So I'm going to put an EQ right after the reverb. And just for the sake of you guys hearing the reverb better, I'm going to turn it up for now on all these leads. So while you're working on it, you can always turn it up, and then you can mix it back down into the mix at the end after you're done working on it. So another bad thing that happens with reverb in your mix is if you have a sound with a lot of attack and like a lot of click at the start of the sound, then it can come through in your reverb and make your mix sound bad. So I'm just going to solo this attack lead I have down here. And you'll be able to hear, if I turn the reverb up all the way, you'll be able to hear that click in the reverb. So what I'm going to do to prevent that is before the reverb, so it's the audio signal coming in, I want it to hit a transient shaper first that takes out the attack, and then it goes into the reverb and then the EQ. So I'm going to go down and I'm going to use Waves Trans-X Wide for this. It's a good transient designer. So what you do with this plugin is just take out the attack. So this is milliseconds right here. I'm just going to take out like the first 15 milliseconds of the reverb signal. Now listen to how much cleaner my reverb sounds before and after while I bypass this. So this is before. You really hear that attack in there, and then after. So now that attack is completely gone from the reverb, so it's sounding a lot cleaner. So another thing you can do with reverb to clean it up a lot is sidechain the reverb signal to the instrument or lead that you're using. So the easiest way to do this is make a new bus and then set it to no output and then use that as the input for the sidechain. That sounds confusing, I know, but I'll show you exactly what I mean here. So I'm going to select all these leads again, go into my mix window, and I'm going to send them all to a new bus. And I'm going to turn all these up to exactly 0 decibels, so it's an even signal. And I'm going to hold down on this and click pre-fader. And that's very important that you change it from post-pan to pre-fader. So now I have this bus set up. I'm going to go into the bus 24. I'm going to call it lead sidechain trigger. And I don't want any sound coming out of this bus. So all these lead signals are coming into this bus. And right now they're just going to the stereo output. I don't want them to go anywhere. So I'm just going to click down here and hit no output. So now that that's set up, I'm going to go back to my lead bus. So after the transient shaper, the reverb, and the EQ, I'm going to put a compressor that I'm going to use to sidechain the reverb to the original signal. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to use FabFilter Pro C for this. And what I'm going to do is in the sidechain function, I'm going to go down and you can see how I'm sending everything to bus 24. So that's where the signal is coming in. So I'm going to go into this sidechain and go down to bus 24. So now that I have that selected, I'm going to make sure I have external sidechain checked in the expert panel. I'm going to turn this auto volume stuff off and this auto release off so I can mess with it and customize it. So now you'll be able to see the reverb signal ducking every time the lead plays right here. So this helps clean up your mix a ton. So what it does is while the lead signal is playing, it's ducking the reverb signal in the background. So it sounds more dry while the lead is playing, but right when it stops, a bunch of reverb comes in and fills the gaps in between. And you can see it all happening right here in this display. So you can use that trick on leads, synths, drums, really whatever you want, and it'll help clean up your mix a lot. One last thing you can do to control your reverb even more is automate the gain after all this other stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and throw a gain plugin on here, and then I'm going to create an arrange track right here for this reverb so I can automate it. So now I'm going to go into the automation settings and go into the gain and see if I can make any kind of cool gain automation on here. So it sounds like in this gap, I maybe would want to automate the gain so it kind of rises a little bit. So I'm going to make it more drastic at first, and then I can reduce it if I need to. So that sounds cool, that reverb coming in and creeping in after the lead stops. So now I can copy it as my pattern goes along. So now let's see how it sounds with this gain automation on there. Alright, so now let's see how all this reverb sits in the mix as a whole, and I might reduce the volume a little bit just to make it sit in the mix a little bit better. So now we've given the leads their own space in the mix, all while controlling that reverb with EQ and compression and all the other tricks I showed you. So hopefully this was helpful to you guys. Thank you for watching. Make sure to follow me on Instagram and Spotify below. And other than that, I'll Catch you guys next time. Peace.